This episode is brought to you by ProMensal.
It's easy to just blame the hormones and think there's nothing we can do about it. But actually, when you step back and look at the way your life's changed and think about, has my diet got worse? Am I relying on those quick fixes, whether it be the glass of wine or gin and tonic or the soft drink, as you mentioned, the sugar hits to give you the energy to get through the day? Are you exercising less? And then the other thing we haven't even mentioned yet is sleep.
Welcome to Thriving in Menopause. I'm Andrea Duval and I'm the editor of Prevention magazine. Today, I'm interested to find out why we put on weight during menopause and whether the foods we choose can make a difference to how we look and feel. So I'm talking to Dr. Joanna McMillan, the leading nutrition scientist and author who runs the online program Get Lean. I thought she'd be the perfect person to talk to. Jo, let's cut to the chase. This year, I've put on a few kilos. Now, normally, I'm a kind of hippie girl. It goes straight to my hips or thighs. But now, I feel like I've got a lilo wrapped around my waist. What is this new tummy? And why is it that women gather weight around their tummies at midlife?
Well, look, gosh, it's a really interesting question, and it's largely because of hormones. So essentially what happens around menopause is that your estrogen levels drop pretty dramatically. And that change means we take on more of a male pattern of where we store our body fat. So instead of storing it around our hips and thighs, which was really in our younger life, that was to help support things like pregnancy and childbirth and rearing children, ultimately. So that was our energy store. But now, when your estrogen levels drop, actually what happens is more of that fat is stored around the middle. So we get what's called central obesity. And it's important for women to understand, though, that that's really a lot of women start to struggle with their weight around midlife and particularly around menopause. But actually, rather than it necessarily meaning you have to gain weight, it is more that body fat redistribution. So we have more problem with it being around the middle.
So is it harder to lose that weight at midlife? I've heard people say the things that used to work just don't work anymore.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt it does get harder. But one of the reasons that it gets harder is that our metabolism changes. And the primary reason that it changes is because we lose muscle mass. So if there's one thing any woman listening to this can, as a take-home message, and you're going to hear me bang on about this several times, and it's going to be exercise. And this goes for men too, actually. But for all of us as we get older, we tend to lose muscle mass. And if we just keep eating the same, then you're taking in the same number of kilojoules. Your muscle is very, very active tissue. It's using energy. So even us sitting here at rest, the one who's got the most muscle is going to be burning the most energy. So it's a much more active tissue than fat tissue is. So if gradually over time, you're just losing a little bit of muscle every single year and you're eating the same, you're just gradually going to be gaining body fat. So although we feel like, oh my goodness, I've got a fat day or I've suddenly put on weight recently, actually it's been a slow creep. It's just that you sort of suddenly notice it.
When the waistband starts to get a bit tight.
Yeah, and then you think, I've got to do something about this.
Absolutely. And so tell me, I've heard that when you have fat around your belly, it's somehow worse for you than fat maybe on your arms or, some of the other places that we're not so happy with it.
That's true. So this is kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it? For women who are storing, we get this bit of fat and we start talking about our bat wings or you're a sort of hippie thigh girl and you've got more of that lower body fat. Actually, although you may be upset about that from an aesthetics perspective or fitting into your clothes, from a health perspective, that's really not too harmful. That's kind of fat that's just sitting there as an energy store. But when we start storing fat around the middle, that's this abdominal obesity or central obesity, particularly not so much when it's under the skin, so that pinch and inch. Don't worry too much about that, but it's the internal fat around the organs. And that is related. It's much more readily shifted up into the bloodstream. So the good news is it's more readily shifted in terms of when you start losing weight than fat elsewhere in the body. But because it can be mobilized up into the bloodstream quite readily, it's also associated with heart disease and your risk of type 2 diabetes and so on. So you do want to try to do something about it.
The thing that's really I think is most unfair about menopause is that it comes along when we're wedged between maybe we're caring for a growing family, we're back in the workforce, we're finally at a point where, we have a fair bit of responsibility perhaps in our career, and then we might be caring for aged parents as well. So we're really wedged in the middle. And we've got a partner. We've got to look after them as well. So we're stressed, we're exhausted. So what happens when you're stressed and exhausted? You look for a quick fix of energy. Hello, Tim Tam. Maybe it's grabbing a Coke from the fridge just to get us through. So as a dietitian, what can I do instead that is going to give me that energy surge I need?
Well, actually, what you're picking up on there is part of the reason also why we start struggling with our weight. Because it's not just, it's easy to just blame the hormones and think there's nothing we can do about it. But actually, when you step back and look at the way your life's changed, then inevitably, when we look at women, we tend to see that there's a drop in physical activity. You might be, I know that sometimes I feel like I'm just the Uber driver for my teenagers. And so you're driving teenagers around, you're dropping off, they're at sport and every activity under the sun, you're spending a lot more time sitting down. As you mentioned, your career also might be at a stage where you've got more responsibility, and that might mean longer hours, but it often also means more time at your desk, or depending on what your job is. Again, that can be more sedentary, less time for exercise outside of work. Yes, if you're caring for parents and you've still got family at home, all of that. So take a step back and actually look at what your lifestyle is and think about, has my diet got worse? Am I relying on those quick fixes, whether it be the glass of wine or gin and tonic or the soft drink, as you mentioned, the sugar hits to give you the energy to get through the day? Are you exercising less? And then the other thing we haven't even mentioned yet is sleep. So menopause often affects women and impacts their sleep. And then when you're tired, you're more likely to be reaching for those sugary foods. Yeah, you're looking for the quick fixes and ways
it's like being hungover, isn't it? You just need those carbs. Give me carbs.
Simply get through your day. So you've kind of got to break that cycle somehow. And it's so important for us at this stage of our life to be thinking about all of those aspects of our lifestyle and our diet. Don't just focus on your diet, because unless you help sort some of those other things out, it's really hard to change your diet. So I like to think of it as a kind of graphic equalizer and think, which of these factors is most out of whack? Now, if you're sleeping like a dog, or actually that's a really bad expression, isn't it? My dog sleeps really, really well. If you are sleeping few hours a night, you've got really broken sleep, you're not getting enough and you're really tired, that might be the one aspect of your graphic equalizer you've got to sort out before you're going to manage to change everything else. So I think of sleep, stress, exercise, activity. So those two things are slightly different. Food and drink. Those are my 6 little things on my graphic equalizer. Which one of those is most out of whack? Is it a little bit of everything that I need to sort out? And really sort of put your priorities somewhere and actually have a plan as to how you're going to change some of those things.
I hear what you say, Jo, but I'm thinking about my fridge and I'm thinking about my son who probably eats enough for 3 adults. So it's important that the fridge is constantly full of things that are going to be sustaining for him, which makes it a trap for me. So suggestions, please, on what can I replace some of those less good options with?
Well, I think giving some structure to your day is really, really helpful for most women. Constant snacking, we've sort of been taught over the last few years. You remember there was that phase of, 6 small meals a day is better than, and then you've got, it's almost like we've been taught that we have to snack. And that's nonsense, quite frankly. I find that most women respond much better to more structure in their day. So if you think about now, that there's flexibility in terms of what that structure is. For you, it might work to have 3 meals and 2 structured snacks, but not this constant grazing all day. Other women are benefiting from doing intermittent fasting and either doing the 5-2 approach where you choose a couple of days a week to reduce your energy intake, or doing time restricted eating where you might elongate the overnight fast and skip breakfast and make sure that you have all your structured meals within a set, whether it's 8 hours or 10 hours or whatever you decide it's going to be. But having that structure can actually help you then not to be going to the fridge and always looking for that pick me up. And then if you also then give some priority to meal times and to a snack time so that they're not just happening willy-nilly in your day, you actually take time out to sit down at your table, prepare your lunch and sit down and eat it. Even if it's a snack, maybe take 5-10 minutes away from your desk to enjoy the snack and, just read the papers for a bit and catch up on the news before you then go back to your desk. And that can really help you then to be making the better food choices, but thinking about the balance of what those meals and snacks are, rather than just grabbing what's in the fridge and sort of always playing catch up with eating on the go and eating on the run.
Oh, that's a really interesting point, Jo, because one of the things that, we talk about the amount of time you spend at teenagers' sport, which often means that you're not home to sit down for meals. And I know at my son's basketball stadium, for example, at the cafeteria there, it's all about the protein balls and all of these kinds of foods that have got this healthy halo around them. What do you say to foods like that for us when we can't actually get to sit down at home?
Well, look, there is a place for some packaged snacks. I do think we have to be careful with this protein thing. And particularly as women at this stage in life, that we do need a certain amount of protein, and protein is really helpful to control our appetite, but also to try to minimize that muscle mass loss. And particularly if you are doing your exercise at the same time, protein is really, really important. So we can come back to talk more about that. But there's a big difference between, and to be frank, it's not difficult to get enough protein from whole, real foods in your diet. Where I get hesitant is where we have all of these packaged, essentially ultra-processed foods that, because they've got, I like that term you use, the health halo, because they claim on the front, oh, it's low carb, it's high protein, or it's paleo, or it's this. They've got these words on the front that tell us, oh, this is a really healthy food. But turn it over and look at, you probably have to get your glasses out to do it, read the ingredients list, and then you think, well, hang on a minute, this is actually an ultra-processed food. Is that a great choice for me? So that's my biggest tip when it comes to anything that's in a packet. Read the ingredients list. Before you even look at the nutrition information panel, simply read the ingredients list and say, is this made from whole foods? Could I potentially buy these ingredients and make it myself at home? And if the answer is yes, it's probably a better choice. But if the answer is, I don't know what half the ingredients are, or they sound like they belong in the pharmacy rather than in the supermarket, then probably that food's not that great for you. So I'm very hesitant about those kind of packaged meals. So if you do find that you are spending time at sport, you're away from home a lot, you're working long hours, anywhere where you actually need to be a little bit more prepared with your food, try as much as possible to take it with you rather than relying on what's going to be available. Because particularly at those sports grounds, by all means grab a coffee or a cup of tea, but often the food is really not the best choices for us.
Yeah, good point. Good point. One of the things that people often say when you're tired all the time is, oh, you must be low in iron. How common is this? And is a supplement the best thing you can do?
Yeah, well, look, iron deficiency is one of the most common deficiencies worldwide, actually, in developed countries as well as developing countries. And so it is very, very common, but actually it's much more common in premenopausal women than it is in postmenopausal women. So your iron needs drop dramatically when your periods stop, because you're not losing all that iron with your period every month. So actually it's those premenopausal women that I would be paying much more attention to iron levels with. If you're postmenopausal and you're still getting really tired, it's worth getting your doctor to check. But I wouldn't go taking iron supplements unless you've had a blood level check and you've actually had a diagnosed iron deficiency. Because the thing is that you can also have anemia and you can have symptoms of fatigue and so on from all sorts of other things. And particularly if you've got you're low in vitamin B12, for example, or you're low in other nutrients, taking an iron supplement can kind of mask that, and you're not dealing with the actual cause, and you can end up with a few more problems. And the other issue with iron supplements are that they can cause constipation, cause problems in your gut. We know that we don't want a lot of free iron hanging around, whether it's in your gut or whether it's up in your body. So be a little bit careful with iron supplements. But if you're anemic, you've been diagnosed and your doctor or your dietitian says, yes, you do have iron deficiency anemia, you're probably going to need a supplement to get you back to where you need to be. And then you can look at changing your diet to ensure you've got more iron in your diet.
Look, I think it's really interesting that when we talk about menopause, And as you say, we talk about this is when your periods stop. But the problem starts really in perimenopause.
For sure.
Nobody actually goes, oh, I am perimenopausal, because it's such a kind of nebulous thing. Is that something that, you're aware of? Because I think that's very hard. It's quite overwhelming to know what's wrong with me. I don't feel myself, and I'm still getting my periods. So why is it that I feel tired, stretched, mood swings, the whole enchilada?
Well, the thing is that actually what the research shows is that you can be getting symptoms of that perimenopausal period for up to 10 years before you've actually technically hit. You have to have had no periods for 12 months to be technically called postmenopause. That's it. You've done it. You're through. You're in menopause. And so that period can go on for a very, very long time. And so sometimes it can be difficult to pinpoint those symptoms, because of course those symptoms can be due to lots and lots of different things. So I'm in this phase. I don't mind talking about, I'm about to turn 48 just in a couple of weeks. And so my friendship group and my colleagues and so on, who are all in that kind of 40s to 50s age bracket, are all at various stages of this and all describe lots of different symptoms. So I think talking with your girlfriends is a really good way to start trying to compare, or, could my symptoms be due to this, or is it due to something else? Is it due to this? As you said, this can be a stressful period of life when you've got teenagers and aging parents and, marriage, or, whatever your home situation is, or perhaps you're a single mom and you've got career and finance. And this year we've got COVID on top of all of that. So it can be, those symptoms that you're describing can be due to a whole load of different sorts of things. It can be worth talking to your doctor and getting your hormones measured, because one of the other things that happen, we've talked about estrogen dropping when you're really in that menopausal stage, but in perimenopause, your estrogen can actually just be in flux. So you can have bursts of estrogen high and then down low, and so that sort of fluctuating hormone levels can be creating some of these symptoms. So having a little hormone check might be helpful to you, but also just the sorts of things that we're going to talk about and have started to talk about in terms of your diet and your lifestyle can really, really help us to get those symptoms under control.
Perimenopause can actually start in your 40s. Declining estrogen production during perimenopause brings on changes to menstrual cycles and often the onset of hot flushes, night sweats, mood swings, and sexual problems. Promensal Peri is specifically designed for perimenopausal women and can help relieve these common menopausal symptoms. Promensal Peri is available at leading pharmacies across Australia and offers a cost-effective treatment at under $1 a day. When things start to change, try Promensal Peri. Always read the label and follow the directions for use.
So let's talk about you, Jo, because as a dietitian, were you able to identify some of this? What's happening for you?
Well, for me, I don't think I'm having too many symptoms yet. I'm definitely a few kilos heavier than I used to be. But again, I can attribute that to a lot of different things. So, and I've been looking, this is a project that I want to enter into next, because of course I'm being asked a lot about menopause, but I also am very interested in how do we age really, really well? How can we do that kind of positive aging or aging gracefully, however you want to term it? So I've been starting to look at the research and really, because, at heart, I'm a scientist. I want to know what is evidence-based and not just because there's a lot of nonsense about this on the internet. So when we actually look at the evidence, we can see that there are very clear differences between people who eat really well and who exercise and have their stress under control and are getting enough sleep. They have far fewer symptoms of going through menopause, and they age better. So things like their skin is better. We've got some really good evidence about good gut health, good skin health, and my other big area of interest, the brain, helping to keep your cognitive function optimal right up until our old age. And really all of that ties down. And what's really nice about all of this is it really ties in nicely with the key messages that we've had throughout our adult life about eating whole foods, plenty of plant foods, getting key nutrients and so on, staying active. All of these things have a really good impact. But it's just that we can tweak a few things during our menopausal years to really help us.
So if we're tweaking things, what do you suggest I take out?
Junk food. There is absolutely no doubt about it. So one of the things that's related to weight gain, related to that central adiposity, related to declining cognitive function and a bit of brain fog, and it might all tie in with the microbiome, which are the healthy bugs living within your gut. All of that ties into if you're eating too many ultra-processed foods. In the past, we've targeted carbs or we've targeted fat. And the truth is that it's too much of the refined carbs and the wrong kind of fats that are present in ultra-processed foods. So that's what we have to start looking at is the actual foods themselves rather than the particular nutrients that are present in them. So ultra-processed foods that are delivering too much sugar, too much refined starch, not enough vitamins, minerals, and this term that we use, phytochemicals, which really phyto just means plant. So it's all of those different plant chemicals that are present, like antioxidants, the polyphenols that we get in plant foods. All of those are really low in ultra-processed foods. So it's a double whammy. It's a sort of double-edged knife where you're not getting enough of the nutrients and the phytochemicals you need, and you're getting too many of those refined elements of diet that we don't want to get, and that's what ultra-processed food is giving us. So if you can limit or cut that out, boost your intake of whole foods that are nutrient dense, you're in a far better off position.
Okay, so can we clarify perhaps some of those specific foods that we should be putting in our shopping basket today?
Yeah.
When we finish listening, go to the supermarket, 3 things that I need to put them up.
Well, one thing, if we put our focus back on menopause, one of the food groups that has been really, really controversial is soy. So let's talk about soy, because I'm going to tell you to put it in your supermarket if you're in that perimenopausal or in your menopause or postmenopausal. Soy foods are rich in a group of these phytochemicals called phytoestrogens. And so these are like plant estrogens. So they kind of mimic estrogen. So when your own levels are declining and you want to try to sort of top them up in a way, although they are much weaker, they do attach to the estrogen receptors in our body. And although the research is not, 100% all in the same basket, there is a large body of evidence suggesting that they can be beneficial. So if you boost your intake of phytoestrogens, we see women have fewer night sweats and hot flashes and so on. So some of those horrible symptoms of menopause can be abated by having more phytoestrogens.
So soy foods to look for would be things like tofu.
So we've got tofu, tempeh, edamame, and you can buy those frozen in the supermarket, but they're also a great food to eat when you're out. A whole soy milk. So if you're having soy milk, but I always look for one that is made from the whole soybeans so that I get that full benefit rather than something that's sort of concentrated soy protein extract that's then reconstituted into the milk. So the lesson there is not to go for the high protein bar that is made with soy protein extract, is to go for those whole soy foods that are the way Asian women have eaten soy their whole lives. And there seems to be the benefit. And the vast majority of the scientific evidence pushes us is in that side of benefit over any potential risk. So the scaremongering that goes on the internet around soy is not borne up when you actually look at the scientific evidence around those whole foods. So I would definitely be putting some soy foods in your basket.
Number two,
I'm just going to say fresh fruits and vegetables. So we've got lots of benefits from having berries. We should be having almost every day. One of the dietary patterns we know to be really helpful throughout life, but including through menopause, is the Mediterranean diet. So think of those rainbow of colours the colour in the fruits and vegetables is often your antioxidant, and it's certainly often those polyphenols that we know are great for gut health and great for your brain health. So I would go for lots of different colours. So we've got, berries, but also get apples or papaya. Vary up what you get. When we look at veggies, include some what we call brassica or cruciferous vegetables. That's your broccoli, Brussels sprouts, my personal favourite vegetable.
These are the smelly ones, Jo, aren't they? Let's be honest here.
Not if you have them all the time, Andrea. If you have them regularly, your gut gets used to them. And you know what the thing is with brassica vegetables? You've got to cook them properly. If you overcook them, that's when you get that horrible sulphurous kind of smell, and they don't taste good. But if you really lightly cook them, so either stir fry them, roast them in the oven with some extra virgin olive oil, some chili and garlic, or pop them in the microwave. I have Brussels sprouts with my poached eggs in the morning for breakfast, but honestly, I put them in the microwave for 3 minutes. I drizzle them with some extra virgin olive oil, tiny pinch of salt. I know we shouldn't have too much salt. Or my current favourite, a little pinch of seaweed flavouring. And they're absolutely delicious with your eggs in the morning. So there's ways of getting them in a delicious way into your diet. So fruits and vegetables, the other thing. And my last number 3 is going to be whole grains and legumes. These are foods that we don't have enough of. I think women have got scared of carbs because we've been taught that carbs are fattening in the media. And then, and low carb diets are really popular. And yes, reduced carb diets can be helpful for us to help control our weight, help get rid of that central body fat that we dislike and is not good for our health. But it doesn't mean you have to go so low carb that you're cutting out the good ones with the bad. So don't throw the good carbs out with the bad ones. Don't throw all carbs in one basket. Whole grains and legumes have very clear associations with good health. And as we age, they can be really, really helpful for us. So focus your energies on cutting out, the donuts and the cakes and the biscuits and the highly refined carb-rich foods, and keep your focus on including those whole foods instead.
I guess they're high in fibre too, which has other benefits.
Exactly. So we need that fibre, and very few people are actually eating enough fibre. And so you need to be eating a diversity of fibres. I've been using this word diversity to describe the importance of the microbiome. And what we know about the microbiome is diversity is really key. And how do you get a diverse microbiome? It's about eating a diverse plant-rich diet. And then last night I watched David Attenborough's new show with my kids, and what does he talk about? The importance of biodiversity. So that word is just so important when you look at any natural system on Earth, whether we're looking at the planet as a whole or whether we're looking at you as an individual or within your gut. So have that word as a key word. Diversity is really, really key.
Interesting. Talking about the Mediterranean diet, one of the things that the Mediterranean diet includes is a little bit of red wine. Hello, red wine. Hello, 5 o'clock. Look, I know that for a lot of women, a lot of friends of mine, come the end of the day, you feel this need to celebrate. It's over. You survived another one. So what better way than to pour yourself a nice glass, and you know that red wine's higher in polyphenols, so let's have that instead of white. Maybe have it while you're cooking dinner. And then, of course, when you sit down to dinner, well, what goes better than another glass of red wine? And finally, you sit down on the couch, you might have a third. And suddenly that is a lot of wine. And it was funny, the other day I pulled out the glasses that I bought when I was, the first wine glasses I had when I left home. They're tiny. They look like little doll's glasses compared to the enormous jugs we have today. So very easily we're chugging a lot of alcohol. But as I was sort of alluding to, it plays a really important role in us kind of rewarding ourselves for just getting through. So, what
for sure. And look, I don't want to be pot calling the kettle black here, because anyone who knows me will know that I love a glass of wine too. So I don't want to I don't want to be hypocritical here. But if we just look at the scientific evidence, the one thing that we don't hear talked about enough actually is the fact that alcohol increases your risk of cancer. So particularly when we get into our later years, we do have to start being careful, and we have to listen to what the health recommendations about alcohol are. So despite the fact that, yes, red wine is part of the Mediterranean diet, when we look at the way they drink in the Mediterranean, the way that traditional way was, it was largely with meals. So there wasn't this sort of idea of then, drinking alcohol off into the evening until you go to bed. So just be very careful about thinking. And actually, you raised a great point with the glasses, because I've got the same thing when I open my cupboard of wine glasses. We've got these beautiful glasses that we got from my husband's grandmother when she passed on. And again, they're really small. And so that was one of the techniques I use to try to curb my wine intake, is to use the small glass. And psychologically, actually, you look at it and you don't necessarily recognize. That's the danger with those great big huge goblets that fit, almost half a bottle of wine into one, is that your brain doesn't actually register that that's that huge amount. So simply by having, and often it's a taller, skinnier glass, can make it look like it's more wine. So try to really sort of curb your pace of drinking that wine and really savor and enjoy it. And then you can enjoy a couple of glasses of those small glasses a day. without harming your health too much, if that's something that you enjoy. But it's certainly not something that you have to add into your diet if you don't. But just recognize, I think it's that awareness, first of all, of what the behavior is, to then be able to recognize if it's a problem and recognize whether you need to reduce the amounts. And the other advice I do give is always trying to make sure you have at least 2 alcohol-free days a week, so that you're not, because a lot of this is habit. It is that 5 o'clock, wine o'clock. It's just habit rather than it really being something that you have to. So think of something to replace it with, whether you have a kombucha or you have, a cup of tea. I've started on my alcohol-free days. I pour myself a pot of beautiful olive leaf tea that I have at 5 o'clock. And then that's got me out of the habit of thinking I have to pour myself a glass of wine.
I've got friends that bought a soda stream as a sort of, their 2-day thing. Is that a good option?
Yeah, I have a soda stream too. I only use it to make my sparkling mineral water. And one of my kids absolutely loves sparkling water too. So it gets us all having more water. So yeah, it's a great idea. And you can make that water a little bit more exciting, And this goes for the people who have got a soft drink habit too. Then try making a sparkling water, but then add some fresh mint leaves or a slice of cucumber. It's delicious. A slice of lemon or lime. You can put berries into your sparkling water to give it a slightly fruity flavour. So experiment with making your water a little bit tastier that you can then enjoy as a non-alcoholic drink.
So, Jo, speaking of that then, brings us to bubbles and bloating, because bloating is one of those topics that probably girlfriends don't talk to each other about very much, but I know does happen more often in perimenopause.
Yeah, and well, I mean, if you think back through your whole adult life, when you think just around the time, your time of the month, usually that's the other time that women feel that they're a lot more bloated. That shows us the impact of hormones. So when we're going through menopause, the hormones that are affecting the way that we feel and what's happening with our body fat and all the symptoms that we experience are also impacting on the gut. So the gut is intricately involved with the rest of the body. So when hormone changes fluctuate, that's when we can also get changes within the gut. Try to recognize what the symptoms of bloating are, because a lot of women wrongfully start blaming food intolerances, or they think they've got some sort of a food allergy. And it's really important that we don't start doing that, because I've seen women over the years who have cut out so many different foods that suddenly they're hardly eating anything, and they're cutting out lots of the foods that actually could be helping them to have improved gut health and reduce symptoms of bloating. So be very careful about that self-diagnosing of food intolerances and recognize that there's lots of different reasons for bloating. One of the most common reasons for bloating, I've got to say, is constipation. And that is also something that can be happening at this stage in life when things are kind of slowing down a bit, and including your gut. Your gut can be slowing down a bit. Perhaps you're trying to do a low-carb diet to curb that gain in weight, and inadvertently, because you've cut out fibre, is carbohydrate. It's just carbohydrate we can't break down, so we need our little gut bugs to help us to do it. So inadvertently, you've cut down your fibre intake and suddenly you're getting more constipated. So, I think some of those, we have to talk more about those things to be able to really understand. And that's something that I talk about a lot. I often say I'm the dietitian who ends up having to talk about poo, farting and bloating quite a lot. But it's important we talk about it. Otherwise, you don't know what's normal and what's not normal.
Well, that's right. So let's just say what is normal.
Yeah. So, well, the first thing that's normal is it is normal to get some bloating. So you might notice that you get a bit of bloating if you don't eat for a long time. I know that I feel a bit funny when I've done my, I'm playing around with doing intermittent fasting. And then when you do eat, it can sort of really feel sort of a bit overwhelming for your gut. We've all experienced that feeling of bloating with what I call Christmas lunch stuffed, when you overeat. And sometimes, because if you eat really, really quickly, one, you swallow more air when you're eating quickly, but also you tend to override the feedback mechanisms to your brain to tell you when you're satisfied or when you're getting uncomfortably full. And so then sort of 20 minutes after you've finished eating, as your gut contents swell and absorb water, suddenly you feel really, really bloated. So those are really common reasons. So often it's not just what we're eating, but it's the way that we're eating. When you're on the rush and you're, stressed and you're grabbing something in the car, you might find you're bloated afterwards. And again, that's because your body is not directing blood flow to your gut. It's directing blood flow elsewhere for us to deal with the rushing around. And so suddenly your gut's a bit sluggish, and you've eaten on the run. So you've got that air swallowing. You haven't had time to go to the bathroom. So you're a bit blocked up the other end. All of those things are just relating then to the likelihood of you feeling bloated.
Oh, that's great news. Thank you. Jo, you said you talked to your girlfriends about this. So just in closing, I'd be interested to find out from you what sort of things you say to your girlfriends about this phase of life with your science hat on.
Well, I want to reiterate the exercise part of it. You have to do something to try and maintain that muscle mass. Exercise is so important. And not only that, but it's great for your mood. So it can help you to deal with some of those mood swings. It helps you to feel better about yourself. Even if you don't, exercise is not about losing weight, but it is about preventing weight gain. And it is involved intricately in that sort of weight control over time. So never judge your exercise regime on how, often women launch themselves into the gym and 3 months later feel like they've hardly lost any weight or maybe haven't lost weight at all, so give up. And that's not the role of exercise. So see exercise's role as that is your time. Tell me how good you feel after, you don't always feel like going to do your exercise session, but I can guarantee you're going to be glad you did it afterwards. So really try to change your mindset around exercise and see it as your time away from your family, away from your commitments, away from your job, whatever else it is, away from your stresses of life. Give yourself that time and find something that you really enjoy and you get a kick out of, whether it's a gym exercise class. That's kind of my gig. I love doing that. I love out walking with my podcast or my Audible book in my ear. And that's my time with my dog, and really stride out and get some good exercise. So that is the most important thing. The second thing then is getting your diet right. So we've talked about putting some structure into your day, but really focusing on whether or not you eat animal foods, you need to eat lots of plant foods. So getting those whole foods into your diet and really focusing on giving your body the nutrients that it needs. So stop crash dieting, stop detoxing and doing all these crazy diets, because the danger is all you're going to do is you're going to increase the muscle mass you lose. Every time you drop weight dramatically, you're losing muscle mass along with body fat. And that just means you're going to hit that yo-yo dieting. So when you regain the weight, you regain with interest and you don't regain the muscle. You just gain more fat. That's a real problem. So you've got to get off that dieting merry-go-round and really think about instead focusing on eating really, really well. Think about the nutrients you do need rather than what you need to cut out and counting calories and all that boring stuff.
Fantastic, Jo. Really inspiring advice.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. If you're interested in more healthy eating advice from Dr. Jo, you can visit her online program, Get Lean. Our podcast today was produced by Lisa Gebelagen for Prevention Australia. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to our podcast. For more information, visit PreventionAus, that's preventionaus.com.au. See you next time.